So for food, I would say that the Australians are very talented cooks. Some of my favorite meals that they would make always included lasagna because lasagna is the best. But something that they always would put with their meals is caramelized vegetables. And that was always the best thing for missionaries because it just made it feel like just a home cooked meal when you got to get like those caramelized vegetables. I mean, and I'm talking like sweet potatoes, um, squash, but they call it pumpkin, or the peppers or capsicums that they like. Um, but also just going out and walking down the streets and eating. They have the best pastries ever. They have the jam donut, but one of my all-time favorites is the Vegemite scroll. So it's just kind of like a cinnamon roll, but it's Vegemite and cheese. And at first I hated Vegemite, but it's actually really good. Once you get used to it, I can eat it by the spoonful. It's like Nutella to me. Um, but I think also something that is different but really good in Australia is their pavlova. I don't know what it compares to here, but it's just like it's really fluffy, but when you like touch it, it's hard and then it melts in your mouth. But it's not like a chip. It's usually made into like a cake and or like a cake form. And I don't know how to describe it because we don't have anything like it. But apart from that, pavlova was a really yummy dessert. And with all the other desserts, you just eat everything with cream. And I had a companion who was brand new to the mission. When we said, come and get your cream for your dessert, she leaned over to me and she said, "Aw, cute. They don't say ice here." Because she thought it was ice cream, but it was just cream. And so you want to kind of lay off the cream a little bit, though. You don't want too much of it because it'll affect your walking. But I guess the food was just amazing. Some of my favorites that I won't go in too much detail that you'll just have to try to know how good they are is the Korean barbecue and time for Thai. The Thai food is the best that I've ever had, and nothing ever compares to it. And fish and chips is very good. I personally used to hate fish, but it's all I crave. Being here in Utah, there's no one that can give you the fish and chips that Australia could give you. Not even Cheesecake Factory could come close to what a little fish and chip shop could give me in Australia. Okay, that's it.
Tasmania and Australia pretty much had the same type of food. It depended on the people. I wouldn't say it was the Australians that had so many different foods, but it was these different people that I would go to, that we had so many different exotic foods, I guess. But one Australian/New Zealand food, I don't know what it is. They always fight over it. But it was a dessert, and it was really, really unique, something I'd never really had before. It was called pavlova. So good. If you ask anybody that knows about it, they will tell you how good it is, because it's basically what it is just a meringue that's a couple inches thick, and they bake it in the oven, and so it gets a kind of a crust on it, like a shell, turns into like a shell, and it's still light and fluffy on the inside, and all they put on it is whipped cream and fruit, and that's what it is. And it's really sugary, obviously, because meringue is pretty much sugar and egg whites, but it's so interesting and so delicious. One of the best things that I had, like a delicacy. We didn't always get it in Australia, but when we did, it was heaven. Another food that I can think of, I guess it's not, too unique to America, but we'd always have roast dinners, like always. They always had, and they called it pumpkin. But one thing was different is pumpkin. So pumpkin to us, when I think of a pumpkin, I think of Halloween, the jack-o'-lantern. And them, when they say pumpkin, they mean butternut squash. That's what we call it. And so we'd have that constantly, like all the time, is butternut squash. And it was seriously my favorite thing ever. But they had a good knack for making it. It was really delicious. One of the things I love from the Australians. And people always ask me all the time, did you eat kangaroo? Yes, we had kangaroo a lot. Okay, well, a handful of times. People wouldn't just make it. Because to the Australian, I guess people don't think it's that great of a meat. It's, I would compare it to like beef and venison combined. It's kind of, I don't know, it tastes like beef to me, but it's got like a consistency of venison a little bit. Like it's more, I don't know how to explain it. It's pretty similar, but they eat their national animal, so that's interesting, right? People always were surprised at that. They had chocolate. That was my favorite. That helped me realize how bad American chocolate is. Not bad, but it's the chocolate called Cadbury. That's the brand. We have Cadbury eggs at Easter time here, but they have bars there, and they were so good. Like, they have probably, I don't know, like 20 different flavors, and that's what we would get every single payday when we were at the grocery store, and we just grabbed some chocolate. And I brought home, like, a suitcase full of it when I came home, too. That was one of my favorite things. And one of the things that's very unique to Australia, a drink, is called ginger beer. So it's ginger ale, pretty much, but just a little bit more gingery. And if it's really good ginger beer, it'll kind of burn the back of your throat a little bit when you drink it. But it's one of those things that you either like it or you hate it, kind of a thing. But I loved it. And it came from a special place called Bundaberg, and that was the brand. There's a place in Australia called Bundaberg that makes this soda. And I think you can actually find it in America, but it's it was one of my favorite drinks there. It's Bundaberg ginger beer. One thing, since it's Christmas time right now, one thing that I was thinking of when we had Christmas there is a summer meal, because it was hot and humid and all of the above on Christmas in Australia. And so some people would have hot meals like ham and soup and things that we have for American Christmas. But over there we had a lot of shrimp. They call it prawns. People would always say, the Australians would always say, oh, let's put another shrimp on the barbie. But they don't actually say that. They would just say it to us Americans, making fun of us, kind of a thing, because they don't actually say that over there. They don't even actually call them shrimp. They call them prawns. But we'd have prawns, and they'd sometimes make other seafood like crab or shellfish. And we had a lot of salad, like I said before. Like, they were just really good at making salad over there. And, yeah, things like that. Everything else was just normal. Like, we'd have spaghetti a lot, and we'd have meat and potatoes a lot, and seafood. It was really good, yeah. Lots of fish and chips. That's one thing that we actually did have a lot, is fish and chips. And they love their fish and chips there. We had this thing called, what's it called? It's a Filipino egg. We had balut, and I swear it was the grossest thing I've ever had in my whole life. But we had to do it because, I don't know, you just have to do that, right? We had a ton of Filipinos serving on a mission. And they would find it at the store, they'd find it wherever, and then they'd feed it to us. And the grossest part about it is you'd open it up, and this is when it was bad. People would like peel it apart and open it up and like peel it apart, and you'd find the duck head, and like sometimes it would be developing wings and feathers. Like, it was so good. And and the little Filipinos just pop it in their mouths and just be happy just like so happy to eat it. You know, it was so funny. I said just really. That's one of the Australian, like cool as, weird as, funny as. It's kind of a comparison without the second part of it. It's more of an emphasis, I guess. So, yeah.
One of the things, I was a picky eater. So going there, I was like, oh dear. But they love custard. They love pouring custard on stuff. And one of the desserts we had, one of the first encounters I had with food was this this dessert where it was kind of a pudding, and they would put custard on top of it. You know, and at first I was kind of like, oh, I don't know about this, but it was really, really good, and so I got to learn that. But you know, the diet is very similar to what we have here. They love their fresh fruits though, and they have glorious fruit over there. I mean, just beautiful. About anything, you know, passion fruit and the anyway, just anything, but anything you can think of, and it was just glorious. So you know, they love their fruits, and they love their lamb. You know, they got a lot of lamb out there, and other meats, and they also loved squash, but they would call it pumpkin. So they had pumpkin soup, and it was beautiful. It was very nice, very tasty. What else? But you know, in general, it was just kind of standard fare that we enjoy here. So that was really neat. So you didn't really have to, if you're a really picky eater, you know, you're pretty well fine there in Australia. Had a lot of the same stuff. You know, they had many of the same like fast food places that we have here, and sometimes under a different name, but it was still the same place. And so yeah, you were fine. Meat pies were awesome. That was also popular there in Australia, that we don't really have here. You know, these little pies and meat, and so that was fun. One of the things that people like to associate Australia with is the Vegemite and Marmite. This really highly salty, concentrated spread that they would put on toast and stuff, and you know, and sometimes they think we're real really wimpy because we couldn't handle it. You know, and it just tastes terrible. But they're like, oh, the problem with Americans is you guys just put too much of it on there. You know, you just got to do a thin spread. That's what it was. But so that was fun to kind of experience some Vegemite and Marmite. And the other thing that we loved is cordial, which was basically just this highly concentrated syrup that you would pour into different flavors. You know, and you just mix that with water, and it was just kind of a punch. But they loved their cordial. Cordial was fun. And then I loved their cookies and their chocolate that they have, because they had Cadbury. They had a Cadbury factory like there in Australia, and so Cadbury was like the chocolate of choice there, and so very high quality chocolate. It was lovely, and then one of my favorite desserts that they are very famous for is pavlova, and it's this kind of it's a very fluffy kind of an egg mixture. I can't even remember what it was as kind of a base, you know, very light and fluffy, but on top of it they would put all of these fruits. So you know, the kiwis, the guava, the passion fruit, the mango, especially, you know, the just strawberries, anything, you know, put on top of it. So that was a favorite dessert of theirs, and that was lovely. So anyway, great food, and wonderful place for fruit and kind of exotic things. So it was really cool.
I'd say the good thing about being in Sydney is that if you want a certain kind of food, you can usually find it. Maybe not as much with Latin American or with people over there, or I don't know so much in those countries, but I'd say some of the. I think I have to talk about fish and chips. I did have that a lot. I'd say I loved it. Chips being fries that we would say in America, obviously. It'd just be a battered piece of fish, and it would be really hot because they just deep fry it and deep fry some chips, and then you can just eat it like that with chicken salt. I don't really know how to describe it. It's just salt that tastes different, but it's good. It's really good. Yeah, so that was definitely a nice snack to always have, anywhere really, because it's nice and fast. And we should talk about Vegemite, I suppose. I think people have misconceptions about that. If you do put it on toast with a little bit of butter, it tastes great. And honestly, I liked it like that. Like, obviously you can't have too much, and I think a lot of Aussies will agree with me. You can't just eat it like that. I think Americans think that we do, or that they do, rather. What else is there? Because of the, I think, Lebanese population, or the Turkish people, there is doner kebab, which you would find there You'd find that in Europe. You wouldn't find that really in America. It's basically like a sideways roasting spit with lamb or beef or chicken on it, which they would just shave off and put in a Turkish bread or a pita or something, and with a lot of vegetables and maybe garlic or onion, and I loved it. It tasted so good. It smells great. The meat is to die for. I wish I could get a hold of it here, but you can't really find it at all. So that's definitely something I enjoyed. That's also, I guess, in the fast food kind of thing. As otherwise, Aussies eat a lot of roast lamb. It's not as much in America. Like over there, you can just get a slab of lamb, maybe some potatoes, and something called mint jelly or jam, and just spread that on top and make it taste really good as well. So that's a popular dish as well. I suppose I did eat kangaroo. I ate some kangaroo. I ate crocodile. Those weren't too out of this world, honestly. I did enjoy it though. I do hear with the kangaroo, you shouldn't eat it not marinated, so you should definitely have some kind of sauce that it's in. Unless you barbecue it, an Aussie barbecue. Just love it for sure. So those are the things that I liked. Australians do have some good desserts and do. Some of them come straight from England. You have the English trifle of pavlova, which is just this crispy meringue type thing. It's just like a silly sweet marshmallowy thing that is just crispy, and if there's the right amount of fruit on it, it's just perfect. Because it's just like sweet but not too sweet, and it tastes a little bit better. I do miss Tim Tams. And if you're in Australia, you're going to have a Tim Tam Slam for sure. You're going to have Tim Tams, whatever kind of flavor they are. The originals are great. There's these, we call them cookies. They'd be called biscuits. And then you just pretty much suck in Milo, which is like hot chocolate made out of barley. And you just sip through the Milo with a straw. Like your cookie's acting like a straw. And then it just melts in your mouth after you eat it. You have to do that if you go there, like all the time. And if you're ever sad, that will be like the only thing that you can do, is to have like really melty cookies, Tim Tams. There's a number of drinks you probably have that I guess are different than they are here. They won't have root beer, they'll have sarsaparilla, and they'll have ginger beer, lemon bitters. Is a flavor of soda that they would have. It's just basically has little bits of bitter stuff in there, and then you drink it and it tastes different. But I don't know, I liked the spice in there. It tasted good. Some people will just have ginger and water, and I was fine with drinking that.
As I said before, it's really diverse, and the food's the same way. I remember in my first area, obviously I had to learn how to use chopsticks. So that was new. I'd never used them before in my life. So I got to learn that. My second area, there was a lot of islander food. They like to feed you a lot. They love it. It's like they really believe that it's going to be a huge blessing for them and their family if they always provide something for the missionaries. So I would say almost every appointment, whether it's mealtime or not, they would try to feed you something. So it's easy to gain weight in an area like that. And there's lots of new foods that you can try. I remember eating jellyfish tentacles once. That was interesting. But generally, it's not too bad. There's a lot of good things to try. I learned to like a lot of different foods. But as far as Australian foods go, they had an interesting sort of cake that was called pavlova. I've never seen anything like it before. It's kind of, I don't know. It's kind of, if you were to make a cake out of cotton candy, in my opinion, it would be kind of like that. And they also have meat pies a lot. They have just pies and they put meat inside of them, all different kinds. Those are really good. Really good. And if you ever get the chance to try a Tim Tam, their little chocolate biscuit that they have, those are the best things. So good. That's one thing I miss a lot from Australia.
The food's really good. Before my mission, I was actually really picky, but then after serving, like, I love all kinds of food now. So, Sydney has a lot of Asians, so they have a lot of Asian food. So that was some of my favorites. One of my favorite places to go was a Thai restaurant. I think it's called Three Mamas, and just love the Thai food. Just your typical, Thai food: red curry, green curry, massaman curry. So that's really good. There's some Vietnamese places too that are pretty good. Although I had some meals that were Vietnamese that were different. One thing I would say to avoid is durian fruit. You'll know it when you see it. It's a giant, like, brown, spiky ball. It's really hard. So if you're ever curious, don't get it or eat it. It's a bad idea. Let's see, what else is good? Mangoes are really good there. They're really fresh. Oh yeah, with the Vietnamese food, I had this thing called bitter melon. Disgusting. I don't know why do you eat that? I don't know. But yeah, they did anyway. So don't do that if you can avoid it. I had some Spanish food too. So pupusas are really good. So even if you're not Spanish speaking, there are some Spanish restaurants, and if they're Salvadoreños, so from El Salvador, get those. That's pupusas right there. They're so good. Let's see, anything else that's really good for food? Watch out for the bean ice cream. I don't know why they thought that was a good idea. It's not. But Korean ice cream, that's good. So you should check out Korean ice cream. That's really yummy, and it's really cheap too. So they're just like in little shops around Sydney. Just gotta look out for those.